Do you like clever games that force you to make insanely precise jumps and dashes? How about games with emotionally moving and awesome allegorical stories? How about if it's all wrapped up in this awesome 16-bit world that would give any Super Nintendo title a run for its money? Does all this sound good? Well, I hope it does, because today I'll be reviewing an awesome, badass little indie title called Celeste. Celeste's closest cousin, without a doubt, is Super Meat Boy. In fact, the gameplay between the two is so similar that I wouldn't be at all surprised if Celeste directly was inspired by Super Meat Boy. They are just really, really close. Anyway, Celeste is a tough-as-nails retro 2D platformer where there is literally zero room for error. One bad jump means death, and subsequently repeating the entire screen over. And because of the insane difficulty of this game, that is no easy task. In fact, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this game is probably out of the reach of casual gamers. It's so tough that you're not going to see your the housewife that, sometimes plays Scrabble on her iPad getting through a game like Celeste. It's just not going to happen. Yeah, it's unforgiving, it's brutal, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. Let's get started. Celeste looks like it stepped directly out of the 1990s. The charming 16-bit visuals made me feel like I was playing it on an SNES or even a Sega Genesis. And even though pixel art games are becoming ridiculously commonplace, I'm always open to playing one that does it well. Fortunately, that is 100% the case here, because Celeste artwork triggers a very special part in my brain. The part called the nostalgia part. Very scientific. And for a brief few hours, I feel like I'm 12 years old again. Oddly enough, however, the pixel graphics aren't the most visually impressive part of Celeste. Instead, they somehow wind up taking a back seat to the higher resolution portrait and cutscene art. And because of these super impressive visual moments, I found myself much more easily able to form an emotional bond with Madeline and the rest of the cast. Because, let's face it, how emotionally attached are you to a 16-bit sprite anyway? I'm not saying it's impossible, but because of these hand-drawn pictures and stuff, especially of Madeline's face, I was easily able to buy into her plight, Lastly, Celeste also has a tiny portion of the game done in 3D, as if to say, see, we could have done a 3D game, but we're deciding to go with pixels, because that's what we love. Or at least that's how it felt to me anyway. But yes, whatever the reason, the world map portion of Celeste appears in gorgeous 3 dimensions. The audio. If I'm completely honest, only 2 aspects of Celeste audio really stood out for me. The first being how impressed I was when Madeline went underwater, and all the sounds became muted and distant, as if it were my ears submerged in the water. It was just a nice little detail, and I think it speaks volumes for the amount of polish this game has. Secondly, the retro game gibberish audio that accompanies the dialogue stood out as well. The simple tonality changes do a fantastic job of expressing different emotions. Also, it kind of reminded me of when Charlie Brown and his classmates are talking to an adult. The womp 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 womp. And that's pretty cool. But I digress. Although neither the sound effects nor the music stuck with me, both are actually quite good. The music, which consists mostly of chill ambient piano tracks, is a great accompaniment to Madeline's journey up the mountain. It also appropriately switches to more violent synthetic tunes during tense moments such as boss battles, thus successfully amplifying the tension. And while I don't have much to say about the sound effects themselves, they're all appropriate to their specific actions, and generally do a good job sticking to the 16-bit retro theme, so they're pretty good as well. the story. If I had to sum up the story of Celeste in just 3 words, they would be beauty in simplicity. Seriously, when the game kicks off, all you know for the first like half hour is that you're playing a girl named Madeline and that she wants to climb up this really dangerous mountain. That's it. And you know what? The game could have easily left it at that, and, you know, we all would have been satisfied with the brilliant mechanics. But instead, Celeste manages to catch you off guard with a narrative that really tugs at the heartstrings. The symbolism purposely remains simplistic to the extreme, and the metaphors are so easily identifiable that the tale becomes open to everybody, despite barriers such as culture or even age. For example, the negative aspects of the protagonist are literally personified as a purple gothic-looking version of herself. So, in effect, she's quite literally able to have back-and-forth conversations with things like negativity and self-doubt. And it also lets her do battle with her inner demons in the physical world. These devices are so blatantly obvious, but they're also incredibly effective. At times, the story is also funny, especially when you meet the cell phone selfie-obsessed Theo. Or it's sometimes sad when you meet the hotel caretaker that hasn't accepted his own death. But overall, Celeste manages to really stay on topic and tells a wonderful story about overcoming one's inner demons in the face of adversity. It emphasizes pushing forward even when things look hopeless, and manages to be an incredibly uplifting story for those brave enough to see it to its finale. The gameplay. The gameplay of Celeste is what the sweetness is to, well, a strawberry. The most enjoyable part. And if you're a bit of a masochist, maybe you'll find yourself collecting all the optional strawberries in the game. However, I quickly found this task to be way too daunting, because ultimately, it was making an already difficult game even harder. Something you should know going into this experience is that you're gonna die. And I'm not talking about 10, 20, or even 50 times. Celeste actually keeps count of your deaths throughout the entire main story, just because of how often they occur. And, by the end of the game, I was in the upper 800s, so, expect to die. A lot. It's just how it goes in this game. Each screen is essentially a jumping puzzle to be solved with Madeline's simple moveset of jumping, dashing, and wall grabbing. However, to keep things fresh, and to continually ramp up the difficulty, new elements are gradually added to the gameplay experience. You'll see intense windstorms that severely hinder your movement. Various elements like springboards and gems that refresh your dash ability. Instant death black and red slime. And a whole slew of other elements that are both a pain in the ass and rewarding to figure out. There are 7 levels in the main story of Celeste, and each has its own aesthetic, music, and even obstacles. And while it only took me about 5 hours to complete, if one chooses to do the extra activities like collect the strawberries, play the harder B-side levels, or even dive into the awesome and weird 8-bit minigame that's kind of like the main game, but not really, called Pico. If you do all of this stuff, you can easily expect 20 to 30 hours of gameplay, so Celeste is not a short game by any stretch of the imagination. And the last thing I want to say is that this is an incredibly challenging game. I even considered quitting quite a few times. I would tell myself, you played more than enough to write your review. Why keep going? It's getting really hard. But because of the incredible story focused on forging ahead despite tremendous difficulty, I was able to persevere and eventually finish this really, really hard game. My verdict. Positive. Uplifting and relatable story, which is pretty uncommon for a 2D platformer. It's positive. Simple and precise control scheme. Positive. Challenging and varied obstacles. Positive. Diverse visuals and music. I really appreciated that each level looked and sounded unique. It was just so nice, because not all games do that. Positive. Beautifully drawn cutscene moments. Positive. Tons of extra and bonus content. Seriously, this game is, packed to the brim with extra stuff if, you still want to play after you complete the story. Negative. Harsh level of difficulty might keep some players away. Seriously, because of how hard this game is, I bet a lot of people just found that it wasn't for them, and that's unfortunate. But it is a negative. Celeste is the latest entry in the precision platformer genre, joining in the ranks of Super Meat Boy and The End Is Nigh. However, because of its incredibly engaging story about overcoming one's inner demons, it is easily the best entry in its somewhat limited genre. Although frustrating at times, Celeste is an incredibly rewarding experience that will hook you and refuse to let go. That's why I'm giving it a final score of 9 out of 10. Thanks for watching.